Hello and welcome into the Three-Man Rush Podcast. I'm Pat Bradley here alongside my co-hosts Karl, Mann, and Tommy Sullivan. And this is, again, the Three-Man Rush Pod, a casual NFL gambling podcast for very casual NFL gamblers. We're not professionals. This is not financial advice. We just like to bet games, win a little bit of money, which this week, boys, we did. Week 2, what's up? Crazy week. How do we make out? How are we feeling?
Hell yeah, we did it. Yes, good week, finally. Obviously, week 1 was a little rough for us. Actually, Tommy did pretty well. Tommy, how was your week 1? Pretty good? How's your week 2?
My week 1 was good. My week 2 sent me back down to like 50-50, and I ruined the parlay. So I'm feeling great about myself right now, actually. Let's go. Let's get ready for week 3.
Love to see that. Love to see that. Well, just as a reminder, folks, quick rundown of the show. We are breaking down every single game of the NFL schedule for week 3 of the NFL season this week, and we are picking results against the spread for every single one of them. Pods drop on Thursday nights before the Thursday night game, and we are giving you our favorite bets of the week and maybe even a little dash of a parlay or two. We're going to have a slight format change here as well. Of course, we're going to recap week 2 and how we did around the NFL. But then we're going to give you our best bets of the week before we dive into the full slate of games. And then make sure you stay tuned at the end because, folks, little rumor has it there's a party at the end of the podcast. That's all I'm going to say. You're not going to want to miss this. So without further ado, let's dive in to week 2 of the NFL season. Really crazy, okay? So week 1, we talked about all of the underdogs that won in week 1. They pretty much set a modern era NFL record for how many underdogs won against the spread in week 1. They went 12-4 in week 1 with 9 outright wins. That trend continued. It was not as severe, but that trend continued in week 2 as underdogs went 9-7 against the spread this week with 5 more outright wins. That means on the season, underdogs 21-11 against the spread. 14 of those 21 wins have come outright. Boys, what is going on here, and do we think it's going to continue? Karl, what do you think?
History would show that it's probably going to go back to like 50-50. So expect some weeks where the favorites just continue to roll. We do it against the spread, so it's a little different, but like you said, it's tough. It's tough with those lines there. You expect a team that's going to win the cover every single time, and that's just not what happens. So hopefully we'll get used to the trends, and we'll try not to overreact too much from week to week and just really focus on each matchup individually and get you some winning picks here along the way.
And Tommy, you're a big winner in week 1, which I don't know what that means because we talked about this before the pod, but it sounds like maybe even Vegas is struggling a little bit. I mean, no fans in the stands last year. Do we think that's playing a part in how little it seems that everybody knows about what's going to happen the first 2 weeks of this season?
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like I got a little bit of beginner's luck in me. And Karl warned us all last week about the overcorrection of the lines and stuff going into week 2, and his record reflects that, and my record reflects my inability to listen to him. So I think that we're going to start to see it even out now. It's probably still going to be a little bit disparaging as we go to week 3, maybe week 4, week 5, we'll start to see like everything settle down a little bit and the dust will start to settle in, hopefully at that point. But I think there is still going to be a little bit of trying to figure out where Vegas is at this week.
You know what? I'm okay with it because that just means we get to hedge back, especially for me in dead last. Spoiler alert, that's what we're about to talk about here. I just get to hedge and say, you know what? Vegas can't figure it out. How am I supposed to do it? So without further ado there, let's dive right in, take a look at week 2 and our overall records. I forgot to do this last week, probably because Karl and I were so terrible in week 1. And we just couldn't bear the thought of Tommy bragging for longer than he already did in the text chain. So just to recap, week 1, Karl and I tied at an abysmal 5-11 against the spread. Tommy actually had a respectable week in week 1. He went 9-7. Really some underdog magic there. I don't know what that says about you for the rest of the year, Tommy. Week 2, you know what? We talk about consistency, and that's what we look for in these teams. And that's exactly what you got out of me in week 2, because I went 5-11 once again, which means I'm pulling up the rear on the season. I am 10-21 against the spread. Really tough 2 weeks for me. Karl bounced back in a big way in week 2. He went 10-6 against the spread, which means he is all the way up to 15-17 on the season. Is that correct? 15-17. And yes. Tommy just a smidge ahead of me in week 2. I can't believe it. Edged me out there. He went 6-10 in week 2, which means he fell just below 500 on the season. He is now 15-16.
15-17, I think.
Yeah, 22 games.
You are correct.
So Tommy and I are tied here. Two drastically different weeks. Well, the same weeks, just inverse for us. So I don't know. Maybe Tommy will figure it out, and we'll start winning double-digit games. And Pat, we're talking about this off the podcast. We'll talk about it in a second, I'm sure. But like your record here from picking all the games doesn't necessarily indicate your like betting record. You want to talk about like how we pick all these games here, but you're not necessarily betting every single game?
Of course. I mean, for you, our loyal listeners, we're going to pick every game against the spread. That's what we do. That's why we have the podcast. But, we try to call this out when we run through every game, but we're not necessarily putting money on every single one of these games. So if I haven't said it, better, shame on me. I'll try to call it out a little bit more for all of our listeners at home. But there's definitely stay away games. We're going to talk about those. We probably collectively, we all, we're going to have differing opinions. You've seen that so far, but there's a handful of games that we feel really good, really confident about, whether we're picking them individually, whether we're going to tease them, whether we're going to put them in a parlay. We all bet things a little bit differently, but we're not betting every single game of the week. So I'm actually up on the year, a good amount, we'll leave it at that. So I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. And I think that actually kind of gets reflected. We're going to talk about it when we run through our best bet records of the week. Spoiler alert, not in last for Pat. So, but as we dive into, I'm not going to recap every single game that we picked last week, but we are going to call this segment, we're just going to introduce it and talk about, who kind of stood alone and won some money in a segment that we like to call Dollar Bill Island. DDBI. I don't like that. I'm not going to say that again. Dollar Bill Island. If you haven't picked up on
worst
that,
Super Bowl ever.
Yeah, DDBI. Definitely going to be an awful Super Bowl someday. So Tommy kind of coined this phrase, which really means you're picking a game. Of the three of us, you're the only one picking the game, so you're alone on the week. And if you win it, you got some dollar bills, y'all. So you were alone, rich on that island to yourself. So again, you're the only person who picked this game, and then you win it on the week. We're going to call that Dollar Bill Island. We actually had 5 instances of that this week. So Karl, all alone on Dollar Bill Island, he picked the Ravens and the Raiders last week. I also had 2 Dollar Bill Island wins on the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. And Tommy, even though this is his catchphrase, bringing up the rear, but he won on the Colts by a half a point that Karl and I still are not happy about. We're not going to talk about it anymore. But again, Dollar Bill Island there. Karl with 2, Pat with 2, Tommy with 1.
I would like to talk about that because I don't understand how this guy, as the personal protector, 1 is in line with the center, 2 gets hit in the arm, doesn't realize that the ball hit him. He goes up like he's going to go block, not even going like after they recover the fumble. And then if you watch the replay from the other angle, he ends up like tripping over his lineman, falling. He looks like an idiot. Like I don't know who that guy was, but cut that guy right now from the Rams right now.
This is Dollar Bill Island, not Dollar Bill Salt Mines. All right, let's reap the rewards here. We're talking about good things, not bad things. No.
Well, it's a good thing for you, Tommy, that you bet the Colts, or otherwise you would be 0 for no islands for you. And with that, speaking of people who do well on their bets, let's look at our best bets from week 2, because not to brag or anything, we said this up top, although I have a pretty bad record on the year, where it counts, the games that I'm betting, I'm actually ahead of the boys this week. So really quickly, back in week 1, I pulled out 3 points with my best bet of the week. Karl and Tommy's third bet in that draft had 1 point. But then week 2, really quickly, our best bets included the football team, the Bears, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Rams, the Bills, the Patriots, the Bucks, and Tommy's beloved Philadelphia Eagles for some reason. Awful. So I did not win the week. It was actually pretty close this week, boys. Karl had 4 points for our best bets. Tommy and I, we tied with 3. So add that into week 1, which means on the season, I am ahead just a smidge with 6 points overall. Karl has 5 and Tommy has 4 for our best bets of the week. All right, moving on, our notable notes of the week. All right, so let's just take a quick look around the league. Really quickly, guys, undefeated teams. It looks like we have 6 or 7 of them. So we have the Panthers, the Raiders, the 49ers, the Bucks, the Cardinals, the Broncos, and the Rams. Again, all 2-0. Winless teams on the season also have a few of those. The Giants, the Vikings in heartbreaking fashion, both weeks really. The Lions are 0-2, the Falcons, the Jets, and the Colts and the Jaguars. So it seems like we've got a pretty good amount, a decent number of undefeated teams, a bunch of teams right in the middle, and a decent amount of winless teams right where you would expect the parity to fall in week 2 of the season. But what do we like? What is our biggest surprises so far? Like, what are the teams that we're going to look back and say, man, I can't believe that team was 2-0? Like, who do you have the most confidence in among the unbeaten teams against the winless teams? What are your thoughts here moving forward?
I mean, I think how can you not have confidence in the reigning champs starting off 2-0? They have to be the safest bet for. I mean, they have a tough matchup this week, but they have to be the safest bet to start off and just make a deeper playoff run than most teams, especially among the undefeated ones. There are a couple surprises there. I've been saying that the Broncos are probably one of the better teams to like rebound this year, but to start off 2-0 with Jacksonville and the Giants, and then they have the Jets this week, so it's probably going to be 3-0, but that'll be a phony 3-0 in my opinion, even though I think that they are still pretty good.
So one thought on that Broncos team. You've been on that. I actually kind of disagree there. I think the Broncos might be one of our phony 2-0 teams. You mentioned it. They've played a really easy schedule so far. And one of the things that I keep thinking of is they kind of remind me of one of those old Broncos teams, sort of like, right before Peyton Manning got to Denver, or one of those Rams teams in St. Louis before they had a quarterback, when they were really good defensively, but they were young. Teddy Bridgewater comes in there, wins the job pretty handily. No surprise there, but I just think looking at who has been under center for them for the last couple of years, simply getting a mediocre quarterback has made all the difference. On top of that, they have a really easy schedule because I don't even remember where they finished last year, 3rd, 4th, something along those lines. They weren't good in that division, 4th. So they have a 4th place schedule with an upgrade at quarterback and a pretty good defense, although Bradley Chubb, friend of the pod, is getting ankle surgery. We just found out today. Of course, as always, we're recording on a Tuesday. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, see if it makes an impact. But I do think the Broncos are kind of a fried team there. But among those winless teams, I think most of us are probably pretty high on the Colts. And I know some of us still like the Vikings, although they've broken our heart a couple weeks in a row here. But the Colts, we want to be confident in the Colts. But then we get the news on Monday that Carson Wentz somehow sprained both of his ankles. I have no idea how you do that. I've never heard of that happening before. But guys, do you agree here on the Colts? Sans Carson Wentz's ankles, we like the Colts defense, at least in general. So we have to assume that they're better than the 0-2 start that they've given us.
But at the same time, doesn't that sound like isn't everything you just said you also applied to the Broncos?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just think the Broncos are a bad team and the Colts are a better one. Okay.
I'm gonna jump in here and say my two surprising teams here are the Panthers being 2-0 and the Vikings being 0-2. I feel like they could be totally flipped in terms of like where they could be. The Panthers being 2-0 coming off kind of cupcake games, and they could honestly be, 3-0 after this week with the Thursday night game, and like the Vikings losing in two close games, two heartbreakers, and then having to go to play Seattle this week could be 0-3. Like, it's crazy that like those two teams, you would think of the two teams, like who would be 3-0 and 0-3 after this week. You wouldn't pick that outcome. So I feel like, again, this is what we talked about, is like when you get set up in those first couple of weeks of the season, like you're looking at like a tough start, and it's always a tough uphill climb. And I mean, in terms of the betting aspects, you have to take a look at the record, but also who they're playing, because like we'll talk about it as we go through our picks today and weeks going forward. It's like you can't always look at a record of a 3-0 team playing an 0-3 team as this team should win versus another. You kind of got to weigh out all the factors of week by week and who they've played and what's going on. So I think just keep an eye out for the actual record and take a look at more at who they're playing and who they're beating, because the Jets and the Saints, even though the Saints had a big victory versus the Packers, that wasn't a Packers team in week one that was ready to play. And obviously we saw how they handled the Lions. So I don't know. Just keep an eye out for that.
They were losing at halftime to those Lions. I don't know. We were the Packers are one of those like little. We're not sure what they are yet. Still after 2 weeks, so
True.
That Panthers defense held Kamara to less than a yard per carry. That's a very underrated defense at this point in the season, in my opinion. I think that they could. They're not an elite team, but I think that they are going to challenge for a playoff spot.
Karl, you mentioned paying attention to, who you're playing every week and not just judging a game by the record, which actually leads us right in here. So some notes around the league. I was led to believe, I think we were all led to believe, a lot of people were pretty high on the Washington football team. We like that defense, I think, collectively. And it's not just us. It goes beyond the pod. A lot of people like that defense coming into the year. But then now off to a shaky start. And, it hurts to not have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who you went through training camp assuming was going to be the quarterback. All due respect to Taylor Heineke, who I do like, although we'll see if he's really an NFL quarterback. But that defense last year, you take a look back at the schedule, they had a few cakewalks. They had some easy quarterbacks on the schedule. And now in week 2, granted it's a Thursday night, but we're making Daniel Jones look like, I don't know, MVP Cam Newton here. Career high 95 rushing yards on Thursday. The football team couldn't cover. We were all upset about it. I mean, I'm definitely upset about it. That was my number one pick of the week in the draft last week. But right off the bat, this football team defense is not as good as we thought it was. I can't be alone in that thought, correct?
No, you're correct. And if you didn't take Washington, I probably would have taken them as my best bet too, or at least one of my few picks. I was kind of high on them this past week, as we talked about. And it's like, I don't know, watching the game is frustrating, especially when you have money on it, because you're like, how do you let the same play beat you over and over? And I get like Saquon Barkley is like an elite running back, or at least he has the ability to be. We've seen it in flashes occasionally. So it's like, yeah, you want to stop their number one guy, but like, I mean, Bill Belichick had to have been tearing his like hair out if he was watching that game, being like, how do you not have someone on the outside containing? Like, I don't know, just responsibilities. I feel like, if it happens to you once, you have to assume that they're going to try and come back to it. So I don't know, give up a 2-3 yard rush by Barkley is better than giving up a 50-yard rush by Daniel Jones because he gets around the outside. So I don't know. And the quarterback running, in my opinion, is something that they're not going to try and, especially someone like Daniel Jones, he's not going to try and make you miss. So if you keep that guy on the outside as a contain, 9 times out of 10, he's handing it off if it's an RPO. And that one time that he does take it, he's probably not getting more than 4 or 5 yards because he's not going to try and make moves and break tackles. He's going to go down as soon as like the first level of contact comes. So I don't know. I just don't know how you can let him run all over you. He's not like an elite runner by any means. I mean, he tripped over the 30-yard line last year. So,
and it's not like we don't know that Daniel Jones is going to run, but it's also not that hard to force him to throw. That's all you have to do, because, it's the worst thing that he does, which is pretty bad because he's a quarterback. But the worst thing he does is throw the ball. And when you don't make him do that and he tears you up for 95 yards and a touchdown, I don't know what to tell you. But keeping of that theme of defenses maybe not being as good as we thought they were, fantasy football fans, a lot of you out there maybe took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the first defense off the board, or someone in your league did. There you go. Tommy's one of them. You got lucky this week, fantasy-wise. Of course, it's not a fantasy football podcast. A couple of late garbage time touchdowns. Well, all right, we won't call them garbage time. It was a close game when that happened. But regardless, you got 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter, which isn't going to happen for a fantasy football defense. And I guess when you win by, 23 points, the final score, okay, on paper you say, all right, well, maybe my defense did a good job there. But then you look at the score and it's 48-25. The Falcons, who we don't really think are that good, looked pretty good there for a little while. This Buccaneers defense, we talked in week 1, are we worried about a Super Bowl championship hangover? We kind of dismissed it because they brought everybody back. There's a lot of, just you know what you're doing. There's camaraderie, there's visibility. It's the same people day in and day out coming back from a championship team. But it looks like that hangover really might be in effect now. Are we concerned about the Buccaneers defense? Because as we bet them every week, we know that this offense is elite. Tom Brady looks like he is out to break a ton of records this year, or at least he's tearing up a couple of bad defenses. We'll talk about the Cowboys in a minute. But this defense, you have to keep that in mind when we're betting every week. Tommy, what are we thinking about the Buccaneers right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say the biggest injury, especially for them, is Sean Murphy Bunting being out has changed the entire complexity. Everybody was saying it was a pro that they brought the whole defense back, but it's also not as if they were in exactly a young defense. So if they brought everybody back and everybody's a year older, that could collectively, all those like fractions of a step of speed that they lost could easily add up for an 11-man unit. And I agree. I mean, you look at how the Chargers were able to contain Dak this week. Everybody thought like, oh, Dak is back week 1, he's all set. But maybe it was just the Bucs.
And you bring up Sean Murphy Bunting too. Carlton Davis entered the game this week hurt. He got hurt more than once. I can't remember. He was down. I just feel like I remember seeing him down, him and Mike Evans, several times on the field down. I can't remember if he actually finished the game, but regardless, we knew coming into it that I think it was his shoulder was not in great shape. And then we saw him in pain a couple of times. So to be fair, they're battling injuries, but at least for now, that has to weigh into how we're betting them. That defense is spotty at best. You remember years ago, the Josh Norman Panthers defense, and just how simply taking him out of that defense caused such a ripple effect, right? It's not as simple as just like moving someone over or plugging some guy in. When you have someone that's talented or who can kind of set, a whole side of a field like that, and I'm not saying that these cornerbacks are that, but ultimately we're talking about the ripple effect here. And I think having two of your cornerbacks either out or injured makes a big impact. So we'll see how that plays out going forward. But definitely something to keep in mind, especially here in week 3, when they're going to be taking on a high-powered Los Angeles Rams offense. But speaking of high-powered offenses, the Dallas Cowboys have looked pretty good on the offensive side of the ball. A little bit of a slip-up, a little bit in week 2, although they got the win, so credit where it's due. But that defense, I think a lot of people thought that Cowboys defense would be better than it is. I still think it can be pretty good, but they're definitely not there yet. And people are going to complain, all right, well, hey, we just, especially Cowboys fans, we just played Justin Herbert and all of those offensive weapons that they have. We just played Tom Brady and all of the plethora of offensive weapons that they have. Who could blame us? My point when we were talking about this earlier was, I mean, I'm going to blame you, because who do they think they have to march through to get to the Super Bowl? And who do they think is going to be there if they do get to a Super Bowl? You're looking at Tom Brady and the Bucs. You're looking at Aaron Rodgers. You're looking at Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. All of the Rams. How did I forget them? There's 5 possible teams that you're going to have to beat just to get there or win the Super Bowl. So that defense has to be a concern, Karl, right?
Yeah, I mean, easily. I mean, what's crazy too is like it almost seems like they play to the level of their opponent, which is scary, not only as a Cowboys fan, but in terms of trying to figure out how to bet it, because you look at games and you're like, this team should not compete with this other team. And like, I mean, the public was on the Cowboys. Thankfully, they pulled it out. But it was one of those things where after watching the Bucs game in week 1, you thought they were going to be able to move the ball on the Chargers and play well enough defense that it wasn't supposed to be that close. And they were listed as underdogs. So we were all excited to take it because we're like, there's no way they can compete with the offense of the Buccaneers and like not stop the Chargers. But I don't know. It definitely is concerning long term. I don't know. I've got my Cowboys hat here because a little teaser for later. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's all about adjustments and just riding it out. Honestly, I think if you can ride it out over the course of the season, then you'll be good. It's just, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it goes against those high power offense. They've got some coming up later in weeks. So,
Tommy, you're not riding this Cowboys tape that Karl and I share. Tell our listeners why you disagree.
So I do chalk up week 1, like playing Tom Brady coming off the Super Bowl win. Like obviously that's going to happen. This week they only gave up 17 points. Justin Herbert, yes, he had a lot of stats, but they got a 2-touchdown lead very early. So of course the Chargers were forced to throw a lot. He finished with a QBR of 34 and a QB like a rating of 87. That's not like, so it sounds to me like they contained him and it was just a lot of stat piling. Obviously it worked out because he like 330 yards is a lot, but it sounds to me like game script worked in Justin Herbert's favor for volume stats. And I mean, if this is like if finishing with 17 points is saying like they're a terrible defense, then the NFL is filled with terrible defenses. And we've seen the Patriots make Super Bowl runs on bend don't break defenses, and I think that this could be that. There are weaknesses here, but I think that this could be that. They didn't have Randy Gregory. They're going to get him back, and I just think that I don't think that they are a horrendous defense. I don't think they're a great defense, but I'm not here saying they're in the bottom third.
They definitely have room to grow, and it would have been a much different game if we hadn't seen, a touchdown get called back. Just a couple of really tough plays there at the goal line for the Chargers, who really showed their youth. Justin Herbert, who we all like, at times showed his youth there. So the Cowboys caught a few breaks, but they were begging to give that game away. I don't really disagree with your take. I do think that they have room to grow, but in general, I think after 2 weeks, I mean, we're not in Dallas. I don't know what the radio stations are saying. If this was a Patriots defense, everybody would be freaking out, and I think justifiably. So we'll see where the Cowboys go. They definitely have room to grow, and if they're going to take this division, which is an easy division we think to take, that's step one. That defense is going to have to step up as good, despite how good Dak and Zeke and the rest of those receivers are. All right, speaking of teams that I am disrespecting, like the Dallas Cowboys, the Las Vegas Raiders, I'm not going to put them in my apology letters this week, but I am going to put a little bit of respect on their name because they're 2-0, and I did not see that coming. So IRL, friend of the pod, our buddy Dan, texted me and asked me straight up, hey, okay, are you ready to put some respect on the Raiders yet? And I said, absolutely not. And he said, okay, but they just beat the Steelers. They beat the Ravens in week 1. And let's kind of make a case for them. So I'm going to present this case for you and let you guys talk it out here. Raiders last year, 8-8. Okay, kind of right in the middle of the pack. Mediocre. Not terrible, not great. 8-8. But 4 of those losses came in 1-score games. They did have some bad losses to some bad teams, a few of them blowout losses. But they also beat the Chiefs, who, oh, by the way, went to the Super Bowl again, and then only lost by 4 to them again later in the season. So Raiders, it sounds like there's a lot of youth there. There's a lot of inexperience. They play up to good opponents, which in their eyes, they've played for the first 2 weeks of the season. And, maybe they're going to play down to opponents. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. They have the Miami Dolphins this week. Maybe that's a trap game. But in general, have I been disrespecting the Raiders? Do they deserve more credit than they have been given on this pod? Tommy, what do we think?
No, I'm actually in complete agreement with you. I think that Derek Carr has gone on these little mini runs throughout his entire career and made a lot of people believe. And it's one of these that like I've seen the potential one too many times. I need you to actually follow through on it before I start to believe. I do think the defense is a little bit legit, so there is potential there. and they could be improving from 8-8, but like I still see like a 10-6 team, 9-7 team at the end of the day, in Vegas.
Karl, you're not really high on them either, right?
I am not. I think if you take away Waller, it's a very poor offensive unit. I think like the whole offense runs through Waller, and if you can slow him down, it's like when it was Brady and Gronk and they had no receivers. I mean, no disrespect to the Patriots receivers over the course of history,
Julian
but like,
Edelman with like a word.
yeah, but I'm pretty
gonna
sure
say.
the year that he like went down against the Lions in the preseason, and it was
Right.
basically just Brady and Gronk, if I remember correctly. It was not a very good season for the most part, or at least you could slow the Patriots down if you took out Gronk and make Brady find other things. The defense obviously stepped up in years where they needed to, but I just don't see that with the Raiders defense. Props to going into Pittsburgh and winning in that environment. And also in week 1, while they did have a home game, Tommy's shaking his head in the background. You guys can't see.
Don't even get me started on that team in Pittsburgh.
but in week 1, with the home game, Monday Night Football starting the season, there's a lot of pressure on that game too. So, I mean, did they have 2 really good victories to start the season? I think so, yes. Is it sustainable? We'll have to see, but I don't know if they finish at the top of their division, which is probably what it's going to take to make it to the playoffs this year with a 17-game season. So, I mean, the wild card is in play. I don't think the division's really in play. I think the Chiefs pretty much have that on lockdown, barring any crazy stuff that happens through the season. And then, I mean, there's going to be a lot of teams vying for that wild card spot over this length of the season. So,
I will add, I forgot there was a 17th game this year, so I should have said 11 and or 10-7 / 11-6, whatever. But yeah, I mean, and Derek Carr's already been hobbled, so that is already like starting to show itself. He goes through these spurts, he gets injured, and so that script is running itself yet again.
That Derek Carr injury is actually, we think, could play a big role here in week 3. I asked if we should put some respect on the Raiders' name. We have collectively said no. Sorry, Dan. Shout out, friend of the pod, IRL, friend of the pod, Dan. Sorry about that.
They need to do it for like 4 more weeks.
Fair enough. 4 more weeks. Weirdly, I feel weird saying this, but their test here in week 3 comes against the Miami Dolphins, who, let's just rewind for a second. Last week, I thought you two were absolutely crazy for picking the Dolphins to cover against the Buffalo Bills. I've ad nauseum spoken about the Bills, but just the Dolphins, who were begging to give the game away to the Patriots in week 1, who the Patriots only couldn't do it because they had a bunch of terrible turnovers of their own, a rookie quarterback in his first game ever as a pro. I mean, there were a multitude of factors that just said the Dolphins are worse than we think they are. And after watching that, 35-0 drubbing here in week 2, all I want to say about the Dolphins is that however bad you thought they were, double it, and they're at least worse than that. That said, we're going to talk about this later, especially because of the Derek Carr injury. We kind of think this might be a trap game. Spoiler alert, that game opened up as a 5.5-point spread. The Raiders laying the points there. It's already moved to 3.5 here, just about 36 to 48 hours into the week, which is pretty crazy. I'll leave it at that until we get to that game a little bit later. But those Dolphins, man, they are terrible. As far as teams that, we don't know what they are yet, we know the Dolphins are bad, but there are a few teams around the league that we think are kind of an enigma. We just can't quite figure them out. So I'm just going to list a few here, and maybe we can talk about them. The Buffalo Bills are one of them. The Packers, who have played maybe 2 of 8 quarters of football, respectably, 1.5, depending on, Lions almost had that backdoor cover last night, although I don't know if that means that the Packers defense would have been a bad defense if that had happened. Just would have been disappointing for all of us. The 49ers, they're 2-0. I think they look pretty complete, but really a poor offensive showing against the Eagles, who I thought they would be. I thought the 49ers would look a lot better. Obviously, Tommy did not. He liked the Eagles. The Giants I put on this list because we think the Giants suck. And we already covered the football team, so maybe it's just because the football team is worse than we thought it was. But anytime you can put up almost 30 points and have Daniel Jones looking like he's MVP Cam Newton, I mean, I don't know what to make of that. I don't think the Giants are turning it around, but a little bit confusing. And then we have the Steelers and the Saints. But among those teams, I mean, talk to me about that, guys. The Bills, the Packers, the 49ers, what do we make of these teams early on?
I think you can't look into the first couple weeks too much. I think you got to let them settle into their own and like see how those first like handful of weeks go. But I don't know. It's tough when like teams are up and down like this, and you can't really get a feel for them because it's like they're losing games that they should be winning, and they're winning games that they probably shouldn't be, or at least like keeping it close. Like in the case of the Giants, where we didn't think that they had a chance of keeping it close, and they did. All these different factors. So I think you just gotta see how it goes over those first couple weeks. But I think using the first like handful of weeks and try and like figure out these trends of the teams, if it's something where they win a game and then lose a game, or lose a game and then win a game, it happens all the time where teams won't go on streaks necessarily. They'll be up and down throughout the season. I mean, the league is designed to be a 50-50 league, ideally. I mean, it never works out that way, but ideally it's set up to be right. Exactly. Ideally, you're supposed to have a season that gets you close to 500 because of your record from before. So you're the best teams from the year before are playing the best teams from the year before, hoping that there's some wins, some losses along the way, and you're playing against like teams from the year before. And obviously teams make adjustments, rosters change, injuries happen, but teams that get hot, you got to ride them after like 2-3 straight wins, but for the most part, it's up and down throughout the season. Not a lot of teams win or lose pretty consecutively.
I do think maybe one of the bigger concerns here, we mentioned the Bills and Karl, a lot of great points there, talking about the parity that is built into the league. But Bills, the first team. So as much as I defended them in week 2 last week on the pod against you guys and thought there was no way that they wouldn't cover against the Dolphins, I do still like the Bills this week, but Josh Allen has to be a little bit of a concern, right? Like the Bills went to where they went to, which was the AFC Championship game last year, on the back of Josh Allen's improved accuracy, which is really the biggest thing he had going against him until that point in his career. And through 2 weeks, it looks like he may have forgotten where to throw the ball. Stephon Diggs is not helping. So although it was a 35-0 blowout, I think the defense and really the poor play of the Dolphins, Tua getting hurt, I think that has a lot more to do with that outcome than a lack of concern over Josh Allen. But I think we're all concerned about Josh Allen here as well. We can't be alone in that. Tommy, I believe you share that sentiment as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, lost in the fact of the drubbing that they gave them is the fact that he went 18 for 34. He had one throw better than 50%, which is safe to say not NFL quality. Not even not like good NFL player, just legitimately not NFL quality. And I mean, I haven't gotten a chance to like look closely back at it, but it's the same thing as week 1 and week. Like that's the consistency right there, is that he's having trouble hitting his throws, finding his receivers, and I don't like. I said it after week 1. Like there's something about that team that it just seems like they're in disarray, and I think it starts there, and I don't know how they fix it. I don't know what they're doing to fix it, but yeah, that's very scary to look at. See that regression.
So there's definitely a lot of question marks still at this point. We could talk about the Packers a little bit later on. I don't really know what to make of them. But right now, I want to ask you guys, Tommy, you were shaking your head. You were angry about the Steelers a few minutes ago. So why don't you lead us off here? I mean, you said it in week 1. All of the mean things that we said about the Steelers kind of came true. Like they really suck as much as we thought they did. News came out today. Ben Roethlisberger hurt his pectoral muscle, but has no idea when he did it. Interesting way to share that news. It sounds like Deontay Johnson's going to be okay, but okay is relative. Like okay in terms of he doesn't need season-ending knee surgery or ankle surgery or whatever it might have been. I'm still not really sure. I think it's his knee. So I guess good news relatively there. But the Steelers, just an enigma. Tommy, what do we make of them?
I said going into the season they were the Jekyll and Hyde team of the NFL, and to go into Buffalo, win, and then lay an egg at home after years of having like two separate quarterbacks of home Ben and road Ben, and now it for some reason it's completely the opposite. And then on top of like Deontay Johnson you just mentioned, that was a meaningless play. The game was over at that point, and Mike Tomlin decides to risk the health of his number one wide receiver. I don't understand it. I'm gonna. You said you were forever off the Ravens. I'm forever off the Steelers because I don't know what to make of them, and just watching them play and make the decisions that they make, it angers me, and I'm gonna have no part of it. So I'm out on the Steelers.
Karl, you must have had a better day on Sunday seeing your Patriots win and your girlfriend Steelers lose. Did you demand an apology from her after seeing how poor her team played, like she demanded from us after week 1?
No, I could never do that. I enjoy living in this house that she so graciously bought for me up here in Syracuse. No, I didn't want to rub it in. I know there's going to be weeks along the season where my team will win and her team will lose, and her team will win and my team will lose. Probably more so what happened this past week, but I don't know. The Steelers are like that weird team, like you said. They're kind of middle of the road. We talked about my rankings earlier. I have them ranked 21st still. Again, I don't remember where I had them to start the season. Probably right around there in 20th. Yeah, exactly. So like they won a good game. They lost a bad game. They pretty much haven't moved in the standings. Touching on Buffalo as one of the teams that we mentioned, I have them in the top 5 here, even though they're 1-1. I have them above the 49ers, which we can talk more about or just let it be that my rankings are what they are. I mean, everyone's going to have different rankings, but in my mind, the Bills, even though they lost that game against the Steelers, are still going to be a really good team on the season. They obviously showed it this past week, blowing out the Dolphins 35-0 or 35-0. And then the 49ers have played 2 cupcake teams the first 2 weeks. So that's why, again, in terms of my Tommy's making faces again in the background. In my mind, the 49ers haven't really beaten anyone to show that they deserve to be 2-0 until they play a team that gives them a fight. We'll make those adjustments as we go. But I don't know. My rankings are my rankings, and it worked out for me this past week with my 10-6 record or 11-7 or whatever it ended up being.
Well, I would say the team that I'm angriest at is the New Orleans Saints. I flat out I gushed over Jameis last week. I put him in our way too early MVP rankings, 5 touchdowns. Tommy was not having it, so he gets to have that fun little I told you so moment. I don't even know what to make of the Saints. I don't know how to bet them they're coming into New England against a really good defense, and obviously it's a good defense, but you're on the road against a Bill Belichick defense, but there's a rookie quarterback there, and they're 3-point dogs, and I don't even know what to make of that game. We talked at the top about kind of a stay-away game. That's kind of a stay-away game for me. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but what do we even – like, Karl, where are the Saints in your power rankings roughly? What do we think of them? Because I have no idea. After we saw them blow the Packers out of the water in week 1, and then we saw the Panthers dominate them in week 2, I have no idea what to make of this team.
Yeah, I have them at 11, just outside the top 10. I mean, it's weird because the way that the rankings are set up are obviously like numerical, but there's different values assigned to where I think that they fall. So I'm adjusting it all the time. So they're slightly above the Cowboys and the Patriots actually for 11, 12, and 13. But that being said, they're a couple percentage points outside of the top 10. So definitely not a top 10 team, outside of the top 10 for sure. But pretty much in line with the Patriots. So again, like you said, it's pretty much a toss-up game. The home field advantage hopefully will play a factor for the Patriots, but I think that's the only reason why it's a 3-point spread. I mean, it could be if it was on a neutral site, 100% a toss-up.
Well, all I have to say about Jameis Winston and the Saints are that we are no longer on speaking terms. You've hurt my feelings. You sent me the meme last week, Karl, of the Jameis Winston apology form. I think Mercury must have been in retrograde this week. That was one of the excuses on there. I am ripping that apology letter up. we are not speaking. I'm pretty angry. So actually, speaking of apology letters, it's a perfect time to bring in a little segment that we like to call apology letters.
Is it too late now to say sorry?
All right, apology letters. Last week, as I mentioned, I apologized to Jameis and Ben Roethlisberger because I really shit on them in week one. I felt like they deserved an apology because they showed out in week one. And then week two, Dennis, what do we have to say about that?
But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
Thank you, Dennis. Which means, Connor, help me out.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
And that's apology letters for the week, folks. Thank you. I will be apologizing to absolutely no one. Okay, moving on, our way too early MVP candidates. Let's just quickly, some honorable mentions in here, kind of some good stats, guys. Pat Mahomes is always going to be in that conversation. Russell Wilson, question mark. He'll probably be in there at least early on in the season. He's going to chuck it. Tyler Lockett really helps that out a lot. Cooper Kupp, if only because he is the favorite target of one Matthew Stafford, who, spoiler alert, might be in our top three. Derrick Henry, though, for real. He carried the Titans back. He's going to be pivotal to their success this season. And then again, who dropped off from last week? Of course, one, Jameis Winston. Chandler Jones, who we were mostly joking about. We kicked Dak out because we didn't have room. And then Jalen Hurts, who, I mean, Tommy loved him. So he was there. But
Didn't do as bad as Jameis.
not as bad as Jameis. That is fair. But looking at our top three candidates here, we were back and forth on this. We thought it was kind of a tie here for second. But after running through the tape again, if you will, Kyler Murray has been electric. We talked a lot. I asked last week if that was, if we had just seen week one of his MVP like campaign. I think we did. And he still showed out in week two, but a little bit rocky, which is why we placed him right there at number 3. But then number 2, the brand new quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford, balling out right now, loves Cooper Kupp. I think we talked about how much he loves Sean McVay. I mean, they are just best friends, probably going to be out on a boat together if they haven't been already. And they are balling on the field. And it helps when you are the quarterback of one of the best teams in the league, which we think the Rams are. So Matt Stafford there, number 2. And I think we could all guess who the number 1 player on our rankings is. And that, of course, is 1, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., the GOAT, Tom Brady, looking like in his 44-year-old season has something to prove. So let me just throw this out here for you guys before we break that down a little bit, because we've got a really great game there with our top 2 MVP candidates, spoiler alert, Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. But Brady, 9 touchdowns through his first 2 games of the year. He has never done that before. He's been in the league since before the dinosaurs got blown up, and he's doing this now at 44. I would like to say I can't believe it, but nothing that Tom Brady does is unbelievable to me. Actually, last night, if you were recording this on a Tuesday, if anybody was watching the Monday Night Football podcast, Twitter was abuzz asking, actually Jay Cutler, former Bears quarterback, tweeted, "What's in Peyton Manning's cup?" Because he kept taking this sip out of a red Solo cup. And Peyton made a joke. He said, "Well, listen, it's not TB12 water. I can tell you that much." And I just want to say, hey, you know what? Nice joke, Peyton. But maybe if it was that TB12 water, you wouldn't be talking about football on TV, and maybe you could still be playing it at the ripe young age of 44. Right. But Tom Brady, again, number 1 in our MVP, way too early MVP rankings. And one quick note here about why are we talking about this? Because we debated even talking about MVPs, because after week 1, after week 2, it's way too early to have a real discussion about an MVP. But because this is a gambling pod, we got to remember, for the best players that you like, the odds are only going to go up the longer the season goes on. The more they rack up those numbers, the lesser their odds are going to be. You're not going to get as good value on those picks. Right now, as of this afternoon, Tom Brady was a about 7.5 to 1, 7 to 8 to 1. He was a plus 750 to win MVP. Patrick Mahomes still number 1 at 5 to 1 odds. Brady's right there tied with Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford. I don't remember what Matt Stafford was. He was a little bit further behind. But regardless, if you're going to make a bet on an MVP candidate, now might be the time to do it if you feel pretty confident about it. So take a look at Brady. But again, speaking of Brady, let's just kind of take a step back, have a historical look at where he is, what he's doing, and the people that he's about to face. So right now, he has 590 passing touchdowns. That means if he manages to have another great week this week against the Rams, we'll talk about that shortly, he could hit 600 career touchdowns against his former team, his bitter rival, Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. He only needs 499 more yards to tie Drew Brees for number 1 on the all-time list, 500 yards to pass. Probably won't get it this week against the Rams. I think definitely will get it in week 4 against the Patriots. Again, he's thrown 4 touchdowns now in 4 consecutive regular season games. If he manages to do that in week 3 against the Rams, it would be his 5th consecutive regular season game. That would tie 5th consecutive regular season game with 4 touchdown passes. That would tie Peyton Manning for the all-time record, which means with another 4 touchdown game in week 4, he could break that record. He loves to break records. He loves to break Peyton Manning's records. And I'm sure he has it circled on his calendar because he could break that record against the Patriots. TB12. I don't think there's any disagreement here on our number 1 MVP candidate of the week. So I'm not even going to ask. I'm going to bring us right into our game of the week. The Buccaneers on the road started as underdogs. The line has shifted, so they are now a 1-point favorite on the road against Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and the Los Angeles Rams. The total in that game is 55.5 points. Karl, what are we making of this game? Who are we taking?
And what
are we making?
Oh, man. Me, personally, I am clearly a Buccaneers fan via the Tom Brady Express and now Gronk and, AB because I'm a huge AB fan too. But smart Karl, using my formulas here, would take the Rams just based on value. I think being an underdog, there's obviously plus money if you want to take them straight up. It's tough with that 1 point. It really doesn't make a difference. I personally am going to bet the Buccaneers because it is a toss-up game, and I'd rather bet the team that I want to root for because, again, it's a toss-up game in my mind. Why would I root against the team that I like to root for in what I think is a toss-up game, especially at a spread of either even or plus or minus 1? So I've actually already bet the Buccaneers, and for the first time this season, I'm going against my numbers and going with my heart. And I'm going to take the Buccaneers in that game. I have to.
I don't know if that's the first time you've gone with your heart on a Tom Brady bet this season.
Listen, I should also say last week on the podcast, when it came to Patriots Jets, my numbers were in line to take the Jets. It was a slight edge to take the Jets. I took the Jets on the podcast. I reflected. Day came to go to the casino to place my bets, and I bet on the Patriots, and it worked out. So for the record on the podcast, I didn't win that game. But again, maybe sometimes betting with your heart and not your head is the better idea in those toss-up situations. Again, it was a game I said I was going to stay off of. Actually, I think on the podcast I said I was going to find another way to bet it. And then when it came down to it, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Let's get the Patriots here before this goes up anymore.
And that's why the tagline is not 3 guys that make you a lot of money. Tommy, what do we think about this game?
Well, before I get into the game, I actually have one more Brady fact too. Is that if he throws 14 more TD passes this year, he will have more touchdown passes in his 40s than he will have in his 20s. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I find that mind-boggling.
That is crazy.
I saw this somewhere on Twitter. Absolutely unbelievable, especially when you consider he's, again, 44 years old. He's only halfway through this decade, and he's already going to beat that number. And you want to know what's crazy? In his 20s, So Tom Brady has led the league in passing touchdowns a few times. Actually, it might only be twice. I'm not even positive on the top of my head. But we all know 2007, 50 touchdowns was one of them. But can you name off the top of your head the first time that he led the league in touchdowns?
Was it 03?
Close. No. 2002, when he led the NFL with 28 touchdowns. So we've seen how far the league has come, which I think kind of speaks to that stat, Tommy. But impressive nonetheless. It is, I mean, for a guy in his 40s to throw more touchdowns than he did in his 20s and only be halfway through his 40s. Absolutely unbelievable. But going back to the game, who are you picking?
Yeah, with that said, I would gladly take the Rams at home, please and thank you. I know that LA is famous for not having too much of a home field advantage, but let's see how many. This will be a test for Bucs fandom actually to see how well they travel, to see if there is any outside of the greater Tampa area at all, and slash New England, because we know that there's a fair few of Bucs fans up here now. But home team, good team. Not having the odds in their favor, I will take that extra point for the Rams, even though I think that they still win this outright. So give me the Rams.
So I will say, straight up, I'm going to take the Buccaneers.
Bill.
Kind of similar to where I was last week when I said, if you can get Patrick Mahomes only laying 3.5 points, you have to take it. Now, obviously, that didn't work out in my favor, but I don't regret making that bet. Because again,
you'd rather lose with Mahomes than win your bet, right?
Exactly. And not for nothing, I hedged and I had the Chiefs at plus odds. So everywhere that I took the Chiefs, I won. So thank you, teasers and math for that one. But I'm taking the Buccaneers this week. So I mentioned when I opened this game, the Buccaneers actually started as underdogs. I don't think that's going to happen very often this season. So even now that they're laying a point, I mean, same concept. Whenever you can get a high-powered Tom Brady, defending Super Bowl champion offense, laying only 1 point, I think you have to take it, even when they're playing a team as good as the Rams. But because I respect the Rams and the laws and gods of karma, I decided to throw the Buccaneers into a teaser. I got them actually earlier today before that line shifted. So the Buccaneers were getting a point when I made this bet. And I had a couple of things, but basically I got them somewhere between getting 7 and 8 points. So that's where I feel the most comfortable, but we're not talking teasers right now. So just in general, Bucs only laying a point. I still feel pretty comfortable with that. I think they can win, but the key to this game, so we talked about their defense earlier on, and in my mind, when I look at this, I mean, these are maybe potentially the two best teams in the NFL. I think they're definitely the two best teams in the NFC at the very least. But right now, I would take, and Tommy, you might disagree with this, I would take the Rams defense over the Bucs defense now today. And I'm obviously going to take the Buccaneers offense over the Rams offense. So ultimately, it reminds me of, like those early 2000 Patriots when you say, okay, well, Peyton Manning's offense against Bill Belichick's defense, who's going to win those games? And obviously we know that the defense went out, and it often does. I have praised the need for defense in a high-powered league throughout the first hour of this podcast. But for me, it comes down to what's better. Is the Buccaneers' advantage in the offense better than the Rams' advantage in the defense? And I think it is, which is why I think the Bucs are just going to win this outright. If they only win by a point, all right, fine, I can live with it. But in general, I like the Bucs. I mean, I think I would just take the money line. Karl, what do you have to say?
I think that's an interesting point too. And like the Bucs are scoring over 30 points a game, which is crazy. And I don't know if it's sustainable. So I think like 55 being the total here, kind of leaning towards the under. I mean, this could probably be a 20. I think this is going to be a 27-24 game, regardless of who wins. I think it's going to be decided by a field goal, probably late, or a team trailing by 4 that scores that late touchdown to go over by 3. I mean, I see it being really close, but I don't think, I mean, you would say 24-27 is probably a high scoring game in general. It's just not as high scoring. And that's why I think like having that total be at 55 and people looking at the Bucs scoring a lot of points. And I think that like a lot of people are probably going to think that it's going to be a shootout and go over, but I think that under is probably the play. And again, within 3 points. So like you said, if you can tease it either direction, really, if you have one side or another that you'd prefer to root for, I would say pick that side, throw it in a teaser, get it to 6, 7, whatever you can, and just ride it out from there.
I like your point on the under too. 55.5 is just a massive number. If you, I mean, it's in our culture right now to bet the over because it's fun to bet the over and root for points. I'm all about that as well. But if we're talking about making money, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see this game go over and even still call it a good defensive game, which is weird. Like, I think you can have two teams that played really good defense and two offenses that just work their magic. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it go over. But in general, unders have been hitting at a much higher percentage this season than, maybe not much, might be around 60%. I can't remember the exact number, but the unders are hitting. So I don't hate your point there. It could definitely be a 27-24 kind of game. Is this the NFC Championship preview in week 3? Is that what we're getting?
I don't know if we're getting that exact like matchup again. I think the chances are high that it is, but we're definitely getting a NFC Championship quality matchup in week 3, which doesn't happen very often, and it's not often that you can say definitively this early in the season that you're going to get a quality matchup. And this is one of those rare occasions, in my opinion.
All right, just to recap, Pat and Karl are taking the Bucs. No surprise there. And Tommy over there on Dollar Bill Island, cue the tropical music. He is taking the Rams, who, by the time we are recording, have shifted to a 1-point dog.
My grass skirt is in the mail.
Speaking of Dollar Bill Island, let's talk about our best bets of the week. I told you we were going to move this up a little bit earlier in the pod. I guess I lied, but we haven't broken down all of the games yet. We've just been talking about the other games for a lot longer. So without further ado, moving into our best bets of the week, week 3. Karl, you're going to lead us off this week as we move around the snake draft. It's going to go Karl, Tommy, and then me third, bringing up the rear. So, Karl, when you're ready, lead us off with your best bet of the week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I already told you that I was picking the Buccaneers, so that takes out one of my little display items here. Let's go with my first pick of Bet's Bet, being the Cowboys all the way on Monday night.
You son of a gun. I was just looking at that.
Wow.
I like the Cowboys against the Eagles this week. I think it's a 4-point spread, which is a weird number. It's, you know, it's one of those middle numbers where a field goal screws you, but a touchdown is an easy cover. So I think it's actually going to be over a touchdown difference, even though it's a divisional game. I just don't think the Eagles, no offense to Tommy, have shown that they're a good team. And I think the Cowboys have. So I'm going to ride with the Cowboys here as some favorites on Monday night.
There is no offense taken, because that is exactly what I was going to look at, and I'm very mad at you for taking that right out from under my toes. So
Yeah,
I guess I have to follow my backup pick here. And my backup pick is falling into the trap that Vegas is setting for me, because I'm going to take the Raiders over the Dolphins. I don't know why that line has moved 2 points down. I don't understand it. I've been trying to figure it out this whole time we've been talking. It started at -5.5. Maybe Derek Carr is worse off than we think, but so is the Dolphins.
Tua. So is
Exactly.
Tua.
So are the
Right.
Dolphins. So you know what? Especially with the line moving down, I'm just gonna line right up, let Vegas take my money, and I'm gonna take with my first pick. I'm gonna take the Raiders.
Even with the line changing, I think I'm on the opposite side of that, picking the Dolphins. It's not one of my best bets, obviously, but I don't know. I just feel like that's a risky play, especially as your 3-point bet.
What are they showing?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Exactly.
You're taking the Raiders, though? What have they done other than beat the Ravens?
Other than going 2-0, right?
And the Steelers.
And the Steelers on the road. So we talked earlier about things that we're not actually betting, and this is one of those areas for me, because all of the games that I'm on this week, I put into teasers. I like to move the lines, really. I mean, call me a coward. I like to move the lines to be where I think they're in my favor and feel a little bit better about them. I'm okay with moving the odds because it's not about like being the biggest and boldest gambler here. The name of the game is making money. We're not just doing this for fun. I mean, we are just doing this for fun. But if you're listening to this, you probably like to bet, or you're one of our friends or moms. So we're trying to win some money here. So best bet is tough. I think for the sake of this, we're going to call it a bet with your heart. But I said I would take the Bucks money line if they're only laying a point. If they were still a dog, this would be a lock for me, even though they were only getting 1 point. But I'm going to take the Bucks -1 as my number one pick of the week because, again, I just think that they can win. I think the Bucks offense is better than the Rams defense, and I think that is the key to the game. And we all think it's probably going to be a close game. And who else do you want in a close game in the fourth quarter than Tom Brady? He's already done it once this year. I mean, maybe. We've never seen him in a game that matters in Detroit, really. So I guess we'll find out this week. I hope it's a thriller like we think it is. But for now, I am going to take the Bucks -1, which means it snakes right back to me. And again, I mentioned I don't like these lines here. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I am now down on the Washington football team. They're visiting the Buffalo Bills this week. I didn't want to spoil this earlier because Vegas is clearly down on the football team as well. I think before the season, this line would have been a lot different, maybe somewhere in the 3 to 5 point range. But right now, the Bills are favored by 8 at home against the football team. Despite all the things that I have said about the Bills being, I don't know, I just haven't seen enough. I mean, if Daniel Jones can run for 95 yards and a touchdown against that Washington defense, what's Josh Allen going to do? So it's a huge number, but I'm going to take the Bills -8 to cover as my number 2 best bet of the week. And Tommy, I believe it goes back to you.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to me, and I'm having trouble here because I am looking at there's nothing that I'm confident in with all of these lines and all these games. At first, actually, I won't spoil in case something comes back to me, so we'll wait on that. But I'm gonna go back to what we were talking about with the Packers and how their defense has played about 2 quarters of football and their offense has played 1 game. That's still against 2 not very good teams. So that still doesn't give me very much confidence in them. And I think at -3.5 for the 49ers, who have looked a lot better than them at home, I think I would take that as my second best bet just because what each team has shown me, even though it's a very tight line.
I like it a lot. I do.
You do? You do?
I do. I like the 49ers. I do think they've been more complete, and I just think we still have question marks. I'll probably eat my words. I said this last week about Aaron Rodgers too, but I do like that 49ers bet, Tommy. We'll see how it plays out, but it's a small enough number that I would feel comfortable taking it as well.
That was my thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah, to each their own, I guess. That's why we all make our own picks.
We know where Karl's going on that. I guess Karl's on the line this week, maybe.
No, we'll see. For my next best bet, which I believe is coming back to me for my second pick, I'm going to go Kansas City Chiefs. At home, coming off a tough loss, obviously. I just can't see them losing at home to a divisional opponent, going under 500 in the standings. I think there's going to be 10 points or more, so that's why I'm okay with the 6.5. And that gives me, even if it's not 10 points or more, as long as they win by a touchdown, then we're right where we need to be. So I'm taking the Chiefs at home to not be under 500 in a bounce-back game. And then in my third pick, because I believe it comes right back to me, is the Tennessee Titans, which, again, another home team. It's one of those weird. How do you know I was going to do that? Because you wanted to do it?
I didn't think you were going to do that. I thought you were going somewhere else. I was hoping that you wouldn't. I was on the Titans.
It was between the Titans or the Texans, and you know what? I just could. I'm just kidding. The Titans, I feel like, are a good enough team. If they can get Derrick Henry running, and who knows what's going on with Carson Wentz up there? Who knows what their quarterback situation is going to be like? So. Again, it's that weird number at 5.5. I've kind of taken some higher lines, but I feel like this week a lot of those lower lines in that like 3 or less are going to be true toss-up games, so they're more stay away from me. These lines that are a little bit higher in that middle ground where it's like not a field goal but not quite a touchdown, I feel like those are the games that have the potential to be more of a blowout and cover. We've already seen the underdogs against the spread being a little bit higher over those first 2 weeks, so I wonder if this third week is where we see it start to come back to a lot of the favorites winning, covering those higher number games that maybe you typically stay away from. And again, they're not even higher numbers. They're just that middle ground number where a touchdown gets you that cover and you can walk out satisfied. So that's what I'm saying.
I said good things about the Colts earlier, and I did mean it. It's mostly about their defense, but I was low on the Titans in week 1. Tommy was all over it, calling out the troubles that they had with COVID. And you were right. And based on the way, I mean, if you only watched like a half or part of that game against Seattle this week, maybe you'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? But seeing the way, I mean, it was weird, right? Like when you're trailing, you want to start throwing the ball. And Mike Vrabel and the Titans did not fall into that trap. They stuck to what they're good at, which is running the ball with the Mack truck that is Derrick Henry. And they came back and they won that game on the road in a hostile fan environment. So all the credit. I mean, I think that says a lot about the Titans. I don't love that 5.5 number. To your point, it's kind of in that weird middle zone. So again, we talk about those stayaways. Little spoiler, like I didn't bet the Titans straight up, but I did toss them in a teaser because I feel good about them at a lower number. So if I can get them at a really great number, I'm all about the Titans. But again, I'll stop talking about the Titans and I will let Tommy make his final pick of the draft.
I almost let my card slip earlier for round 2, but I think with 1 point on the line, I will bet with my heart on this one. Give me the Patriots as my last pick. I really, really don't like Jameis Winston, and we've seen last week that if the Patriots can pressure quarterbacks into bad throws, which you don't even have to pressure Jameis into a bad throw, he'll just do it. And I think that this could cause a lot of turnovers for the Saints. I am a little worried about Kamara because if the Patriots have been gashed by star running backs before, it's happened. It'll continue to happen probably. He's coming off a bad week last week, so there are some warning signs there, which is why I wanted to wait to take it with my last pick. But I think the Saints have looked bad. Patriots have looked good. 3-point spread. I'll take that.
I like it. You hit all the points. You hit all the points that I think I'm probably going to bring up when we get to that game. So I'll leave it for that. But it's such a low number. I don't hate that pick for you either.
Yeah.
And I know Karl loves it too. With Jameis Winston against the Bill Belichick defense and Bill Belichick being at home. Kind of a tough pick for me here, but I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. This line has also moved tremendously. So when this opened, I want to say it was around, do we remember 7 or 7.5? It is already moved. Okay, already moved 1.5 to 9 points. So if you are listening to this, by the time you're listening to this on Thursday, it could be even bigger. I won't be surprised if it moves. But currently the Ravens are 9-point favorites. But here's what we're going to do. I doubted the Ravens. I'm sorry. I was on the Ravens. Then I swore I was off of the Ravens forever. And then they made me look bad. And they came back and they won that game against the Chiefs. I did tell you guys before we started recording that I thought the Chiefs gave that game away more than the Ravens won it. But we were a little bit concerned about the Lions coming into this week against the Packers just because of what they had done in the fourth quarter, the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter in week 1 against the 49ers. But then we saw the Packers cover a huge spread this week, almost got the backdoor cover, the Lions did. But if we're going to rank opponents of who's better, I think, San Francisco and Green Bay, probably pretty similar. I did just say I think San Francisco is a little bit better, but they're fairly similar, I think, right now through 2 weeks of the season. I think Baltimore is better than both of them. Karl, you probably disagree with me, or you might disagree with me, but based on that logic alone, we saw San Francisco cover a 7.5 point spread. If you got that late, the Lions got the backdoor cover, so no soup for you. but the Packers managed to cover on Monday Night Football. I feel good enough in the Ravens, even on the road, that they can take care of business as long as they don't play down to their opponent. So this is risky, but for the best bets, I'm going to take the Ravens -9. It's only a point up for grabs. But again, we talk about a bunch this week, games that we do and we do not bet. I'm not taking the Ravens -9 straight up. Like I'm not walking in for those -110 odds. I'm sticking the Ravens in a teaser. They're begging to be teased. You can get them down to 3, maybe 2 points. That's what I'm going to do, depending on how we do it. We might talk about that a little bit later. But again, my final pick there is the Baltimore Ravens. So just to recap quickly, our best bets of the week in the first round, Karl led us off, taking the Cowboys at -4. Tommy likes the Raiders laying 3.5 points. They're taking on the lowly Miami Dolphins. I guess I'm betting with my heart as well after making fun of Karl for doing the same thing. I'm taking the Bucs, who are now a 1-point favorite as of this recording. Circled right back to me in the second round. I'm taking the Bills -8. I could regret that. That's a huge number to cover, but we'll see. I just don't like the football team anymore. I'm off of them. Tommy's taking the 49ers, laying 3.5 points against the Packers. Karl is taking the Kansas City Chiefs, laying a little more than a touchdown, 6.5 points at home against the Chargers. He's also in the third round taking the Titans -5.5 against the Colts. Tommy is sticking with the Patriots at home, 3-point favorites against the Saints. And I am taking the Baltimore Ravens, massive 9-point favorites on the road against the Detroit Lions. All right, those are our best bets of the week, which means it's time for us to make our way around the entire NFL. Again, we are picking spreads for every single game of the week. We've already given you our best bets. We're going to dabble in a little bit of a parlay in a few minutes. But up first, we've already given you our game of the week thoughts. So we're going to dive right in here. I switched up the categories a little bit this week because I don't know that I'm going to call these must-watch games. They're kind of intriguing games. So on our little rundown here, I called it we're going to learn something games of the week. And first on that list, we talked about them. The Packers are facing the 49ers. 49ers are hosting that game. They are laying 3.5 points. That is the Sunday Night Football matchup this week, if that matters to you. And the total is 49.5 points. Karl, you disagreed with Tommy taking the 49ers there in our best bet. So why don't you lead us off and tell us why you like the Green Bay Packers?
So it's funny because I'm like sitting here thinking about it, looking at it, and it's one of those toss-up games where the projected line that I have falls exactly in line. I have the spread at the 49ers -3.53. So literally 0.03 off of what the actual spread is, right? So I don't know. I think that it's a good bet. I just would stay off of it. I wouldn't make it as one of my bets, but this is one that I'm staying off of completely. For the sake of the podcast, I'm going to go with the 49ers. You talked about it earlier in the Packers playing the Lions and playing down for the first half. Let's see them play a full, complete 60-minute game, start to finish, and then we'll be able to make some more, I guess, concrete decisions on how good of a team they are, because I do think they're a better team than the 49ers, or at least right in the same pace. But with the 49ers being at home, I'll take those 3.5 points, like Tommy said, as a stay away game for me in terms of betting. But in terms of record keeping here, I'll take the 49ers.
I don't really know what to make of this, which is why it leads off the we're going to learn something section. This could be the game that we look back on and say, man, San Francisco is not as good as we thought they were, or they're not on the same tier as a Green Bay, who was in the NFC Championship game last season. Or we could say this is when we found out that Aaron Rodgers' last year in Green Bay is not going to be as cheery as Packers fans would hope for.
For sure.
I'm going to take the 49ers here just because I think they've looked more complete to this point. Tommy, I know you're on the 49ers too. Anything else that you're watching in that game that kind of led you to San Francisco?
Not particularly. I think I covered it mostly in the best bet section. I will say though, is like for anyone that does player props, Devontae Adams is still touchdownless on the season, so look for him to get on the board this week. I don't think he goes 3 games in a row without a touchdown. So if you're looking at player props, I would look at that.
I like it. All right, moving on. We have the Saints visiting Foxborough, facing the New England Patriots. They are laying 3 points. The Patriots are. Total in that game, only 41.5. Vegas not very confident in a lot of points coming from a Jameis Winston-led offense with a rookie quarterback who has been fine, but only fine for the first 2 weeks of the season, and Mac Jones, and a hesitant Josh McDaniels calling the plays as well. Tommy, you talked about it. My biggest concern is Alvin Kamara, because what Patriots linebacker? I'm just having flashbacks to the Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl, which what's his name? Corey Clements, is that his name?
Yeah.
You know, with that wheel route, just burning a linebacking core that we liked. Yes, it's Jameis Winston giving him the ball. Yes, Latavius Murray is no longer there to kind of spell him, but Alvin Kamara is so dynamic. I worry about that alone. But on the other hand, you have Jameis Winston, who is as volatile as they get, throwing against what has looked like a decent Patriots secondary here, and overall a pretty good defense early in the season. So I think it's a stay away for the sake of the pod. If I say Patriots, I'm only betting with my heart. If I had to bet, I think I would take the Saints +3. So that's what I'm going to do for the pod. Give me the points with the Saints on the road. I might regret that and apologize to the Patriots next week. Karl, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you in terms of like where I make it. Stay away game. I have it at Patriots -256. So there is some value on the Saints there, but not much. So again, in the case of a toss-up game like this, I'm going to stay off it financially. But for the podcast, you know what? Screw it. It's week 3. Give me the favorite. We're trying to get that against the spread number back to 50, so I might as well just start picking favorites. The theme of the first 2 weeks were take the points. Now it's lay the points. I'll take the Patriots -3.
Interesting. Tommy, anything else to add there?
Yeah, I don't have nothing. Not much, but kind of annoyed the health of him is going to be. I don't know if they've said anything about where he's going to be, but when he was with the Patriots the first time, they used him to cover receivers and running backs, and Karl can actually talk more about whether Matthew Judon is fast enough to cover run. I'm not 100% sure on that, if he's like just purely a rusher or if he can cover guys in spaces like that. But other than that, I don't know who they have to cover.
Yeah, I mean, he's played pretty well, I feel like, in coverage recently. I think he is kind of that do-it-all. I think, like we talked about.
Kyle Duggar?
Was that?
Maybe Kyle Duggar?
I mean, Belichick knows exactly who to put on every single person. It seems like he plays those matchups really well. So I'm sure he'll find it. And if it doesn't work in the first quarter, he'll change it up for the second, third, fourth, wherever he needs to. So I think we talked about getting to Jameis Winston and making him make bad throws. I think we talked about earlier, containing Daniel Jones and making him throw. I think that's the same thing here. Stop the run. Make sure we're not letting Kamara run the game here and force Jameis Winston to put the ball downfield. Because like we saw this past week with the Jets, if you can put the ball downfield versus the Patriots, they're going to make plays on the ball. It's those short passes to the wide receiver on like a slant. It's the short passes to a running back in open space that really starts to like tear down the Patriots defense. And it goes along with the bend don't break defense. So again, if you can force them into like making deeper throws, you put them in desperation mode, and the Patriots defense will make the plays.
I will say I'm a little bit worried because historically for the Patriots, everything you just said, I'm having nightmares thinking about the slashing running backs and the short passes and the outs and all of that. But the Saints are going to go as their offense goes, and it's such a huge question mark. Yes, the Panthers kind of wiped the floor with them last week, but I don't think their defense looked terrible. I just thought the offense couldn't keep up. And the defense held Aaron Rodgers to 3 points in week 1. So that defense is going to be the constant. I want to know if Trent Brown's playing the right tackle for the New England Patriots, because the backup plan we saw,
Durant.
Yasir Durant in there just get demolished. We saw some people make their NFL debuts. We saw some people with not a lot of experience. I don't love Mac Jones against a Saints defense if he doesn't have the best protection the Patriots have to offer on the line playing that game. I don't know what the health of Trent Brown is going to be at this point. We'll find out later this week. But that's a huge concern for me as well, which is also why I'm going to say give me the points for the Saints on the road, and let's see what Jameis can do, because if he can just keep slashing away with Kamara, I think the Saints can come away with a win.
Sure.
All right, moving on. Eagles at Cowboys. Karl, why don't you lead us off? Tell me why you took the Cowboys -4. What do you like so much about them?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like they just move the ball downfield at will. Even though they didn't put a lot of points on the board this past week, like Tony Pollard stepped up. So you have like a nice pass catching running back, a little speed back in Pollard, and you got the power, thunder and lightning over there with Zeke Elliott. Dak obviously is an MVP caliber quarterback when he wants to be. So I think like you got a good 3-headed monster there, Dak and 2 running backs. I think, if their defense can just play at an average level, I don't like the Eagles offense really. I know Tommy was pretty high on them to start the season. We're just going to keep calling back to Jalen Hurts MVP over here.
Where is all this hate for Jameis Winston MVP?
He still has 5 touchdowns. We're not on speaking terms. I did just take his team, but he does have 5 touchdowns. Yeah, defend your Eagles in your Jalen Hurts.
I will not, because I'm also taking the Cowboys in this matchup. Dak is too good. Like Karl said, they moved the ball even though they didn't have the points. And I think that this is just going to be a big Dak game. I'm not going to lie. Especially at home. This is their first home game. That crowd is going to be raring to go. 4 points I don't think is enough for what these two teams have shown thus far. So yeah, give me Dallas easily.
And again, this is on Monday Night Football too, so that place is gonna be rocking. Dak finally back, fans finally back. I just kind of feel like Vegas is maybe disrespecting the Cowboys. I mean, they had them as straight up dogs on the road last week. Give me the Cowboys. I think we are all in agreement here. Give me the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Always a little bit tighter when the NFC East plays each other. We saw that on Thursday last week. We've seen it again and again and again. So it's going to be a hard-fought, exciting game to watch, I believe. But I also, despite everything I just said, wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys blew the Eagles out. The Eagles' defense is probably better than I gave it credit for. I really thought coming into the year that the Eagles were bad. They have proven me wrong to an extent, but I'm still going to take the Cowboys. I think that line should be larger. So Cowboys -4, put it in the books. All right, next up, the Chicago Bears at the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are 7-point favorites in this one, and the total is 46. Karl, what do we think? That's kind of a big number against a defense that could cause some problems for Baker Mayfield.
No, you're absolutely right. I actually have the spread at like just over 6. So at 7.5 points, I will take the points with Chicago. Love the Browns. Jarvis Landry did get hurt, and OBJ's status still up in the air every week. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I think I would rather take the points in this situation than have the Browns lay 7. So if I put some money on it, it would be very small. It wouldn't be like a full amount. My betting strategy we could talk about separately, but in terms of this game specifically, I would put a little bit on the Bears to cover that 7.5 spread. If you can get it 7 or higher, even 6.5, probably still some there. 6 or lower, definitely not betting on it, but I'll take the points here on the Bears.
Tommy?
I actually thought this was going to be another opportunity for Dollar Bill Island for me, but I'm taking the Bears as well. That the Browns let the Texans hang around last week. Even after Tyrod got hurt, a little bit too long for my liking for this spread amount, because they're getting a more improved defense coming in this week. and I think that'll lead to some mistakes for Baker. But I think they ultimately win, but not at this number. So I'll take the points with Chicago.
Are we concerned that we don't currently know who the quarterback of the Bears is going to be? Because if Andy Dalton is healthy enough to play, the Bears are claiming that they will play him. The replay, that slow motion replay, I mean, I thought Andy Dalton like popped an Achilles when you saw it. The announcer said his knee buckled. I don't know what's going on, but does it matter to you who's under center? If it's Justin Fields or if it's Andy Dalton, does that change your opinions of this game? Yep.
I don't think so. Not enough for it to make a difference. I don't think that there's too much difference. There's difference in playing style, and there's definitely difference in like their abilities. But I think in terms of like how the team performs, I don't see too much of a drop off from one quarterback to another, or an improvement. I guess they pretty much just fall right in line with, running different styles, but still producing the same outcome, I think.
I would say same outcome. I would say it would benefit the Bears in this instance to probably have Justin Fields playing because he's similar to Tyrod, where he can get out of the pocket, he can move around. If that pass rush gets to Andy Dalton, though, it's going to be Sack City all day.
Sack City. I'm also going to take the Bears. I don't hate the Browns. I mean, I think the Browns are going to win outright. I put the Browns in a teaser, but that's all the more reason on the pod that I should take the Bears because I don't like the Browns as a 7-point favorite. I think the Bears defense is good enough. And if whoever quarterbacks them can be relatively mistake-free, I think there's just enough wiggle room for them to cover. And especially if this line ends up moving to the Browns being even bigger favorites, I would say hammer the Bears as dogs, take those points. So we are all in agreement here on the Chicago Bears. All right. Our favorite Pittsburgh Steelers, only 4.5-point favorites against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are coming into Pittsburgh. Total here is 45 points. We don't know if Ben's probably going to play, but we don't know if Ben's going to play. We don't know if Deontay Johnson is going to play. I'm just going to say outright 4.5 feels like a small enough number, but a big enough amount of points that I would take the Bengals just because of the uncertainty. Because if we find out tomorrow morning, which is Wednesday, for those of you listening later in the week on Thursday, if we find out that Ben Roethlisberger isn't playing, I do think this line shifts. I don't think it shifts enough that the Bengals suddenly become favorites. I think that would be drastic because in general, the Steelers should be a better team, but I like the Bengals. So I'm going to take the points on this one. Who agrees with me?
Not Karl.
As Karl lifts up
time
the Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, for those of you listening.
For the first time all season, probably not the last, I'm going with Kayla's Pittsburgh Steelers to cover the spread. I think they'll probably win by a touchdown. So again, that number at like 4.5, whatever it ends up being, even if it does get dropped down, it helps me. So I'm going to bet it now at this number. And if I can get it lower at 3 or less without Roethlisberger there, that just helps me again, even more because of that number. So I'll take the Pittsburgh Steelers here. I think it should be about a touchdown game.
I was going to program a note for those listening. I think DraftKings is just as worried about all those injuries as you are, Pat, because it is no longer on their betting board. They've taken it off for now.
There you go.
And the other one that you didn't mention, given all the injury things, is TJ Watt. I don't know if he's going to be healthy. I haven't heard any updates. I know that he left on Sunday. And I actually agree with you. If it stays at 4.5, give me the Bengals on this. I said it early on. I'm off on Pittsburgh for now. They've burned me twice. And fool me once, shame on me, or whatever the phrase is. Fool me twice, shame on somebody. Either way, shame on the Steelers for doing the things that they do to cause me pain. So give me Cincy.
I am not going to feel any shame because if you can jump on the Bengals 4.5, and again, it looks like it's just been taken down right now because there's too much uncertainty with all of those injuries. But if you can get the Bengals, getting 4.5 points with the way that Joe Burrow has looked, the connection that he has with Jamar Chase, And the fact that, I mean, I really think any week we could see Ben Roethlisberger at the local sub shop with one camera guy announcing his retirement while he stuffs his fat face. The guy is done. He's cooked. It is over. He is an old 39, unlike Tom Brady, who is a young 44. Give me those points. I am off on the Steelers, and no matter what happens, I am not apologizing to anybody. Kayla.
This will be the week that he throws for like 5 touchdown passes, or maybe like
Absolutely, and she's
Yeah,
going to
maybe
rub
like-
it in my face.
maybe like 4 touchdown passes and like a shovel pass to Chase Claypool that like counts as a touchdown.
Don't even
pass.
say that. Just,
You know-
just maximize the pain for me, please. Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Sure, but if he has that 4 INT game that we've been waiting for, I am
Dreams-
showing up in black, and we are holding a funeral for Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers. I'm out.
I'll go full Kim K at the Met Gala for that funeral.
I will pay money to see that. We're going to charge our YouTube viewers for that one. All right, moving on. Chargers getting 6.5 points on the road at the Chiefs. The total here is 55.5 points because nobody's going to play defense in that game, according to Las Vegas. Karl, what do we like?
I
We
kind
know
of
what
already
you
touched
like.
on this. Yeah, we already know what I like. I like the Chiefs. I think it's going to be a blowout. I actually think that it'll be a high-scoring game for the Chiefs and not so much for the Chargers. So I don't know. The over might be in play, but I like a lot of points here for the Chiefs. I would say, take a look at the team total for the Chiefs. Possibly bet that over and the team total for the Chargers under. Chiefs aren't known for being good at defense, but I don't know. I just think that it's going to be a blowout. I think that just nowhere near a close game in this game.
So I was leaning towards taking the Chargers at first, but Karl convinced me, especially coming off a loss, that motivational factor at home in Arrowhead. I do think this is going to be a heavy shootout game. I think in DFS, if you can spend up for Mahomes, take it. If not, Justin Herbert isn't a bad like fallback option to run it back. If you take Kelsey's going to run, so I will take the Chiefs with the points here or with the cover.
I'm taking the Chiefs. I'm taking the over. I don't know if either team's going to play good enough defense. And I think the Chargers, I think it could be a blowout. I think it probably will be a blowout. But I think the Chargers are good enough to kind of keep it interesting to the point where Mahomes has to keep throwing the ball and has to keep piling on. It's not going to be one of those where like you feel bad. You're going to politely just run the ball for a quarter and a half. I think we're going to see a lot of passing in this game. And I'm going to take the over, but I'm taking the Chiefs. All right, moving on to our watchable slate. I don't know if we're going to learn anything in this game, which is why I did not have it in our We're Going to Learn Something slate. But the Seattle Seahawks are laying 2 points on the road, taking on the Minnesota Vikings. This is also a massive 55.5 point over. Karl, you kind of surprised me when we were running through this game earlier. So why don't you tell our listening audience how you feel about the Minnesota Vikings?
All right, so in terms of betting the game, I'm going to stay off it for the spread. I like the Seahawks -2. 2.5 is kind of where I make the spread. So there is like a half point value on the spread at 2. But so my official pick for the spread will be the Seahawks, just because I do think that they have the ability to cover that. However, we'll talk about it later, but I'm going to give you a little teaser now. I do think the Vikings could win this game. I think this is one of the toss-up games of the week, which is why I'm staying off of it. I think the last 2 games that they played were tight games, the high scoring. It's at Minnesota, so they should have home field advantage. The 3 points taken into account there does get me to that 2.5 number, still underdogs for the Vikings. So again, if you're taking a flyer on a team, a home dog is always where you want to do it, especially when the market's really high on one team and really low on another. So for the pick here, Seattle versus spread. Future, later in the podcast, stay tuned. We may have a little treat for you with that money line.
If you're a fan of offense, this one's probably going to be for you. Tommy, which offense are you going to pick in this game?
Oh, I'm taking the Seahawks. I think Karl is very wrong here. I said, I forget if it was earlier. I think it was yesterday I said this, but if there's a bet on first head coach to be fired, I think Mike Zimmer might be leading the pack right about now. And I actually think that this game might be the one that breaks the camel's back on that, because they have been beaten for long passes in 2 straight games. And guess whose offense that funnels right into is Russell Wilson, right to Tyler Lockett. Might happen multiple times. Might get DK Metcalf in there. But I think that this is, I don't understand why the spread is so low. I think 2 points is not enough for Seattle to not cover, and I think that they're going to easily win this. So I'll take Seattle.
I got burned by Russ last week. I got burned when I didn't pick Russ in week 1. I've been burned both weeks by the Vikings, but they're just like a bad drug that I can't kick. I don't love betting this game, but for the sake of the pod, give me the points. I'm taking the points. Vikings +2. Kirk Cousins, baby. I like that. Give me some more. I love that, actually. And before this gets weirder, we're going to move on to the Colts facing the Titans in Tennessee. Titans are laying 5.5 points. The total here is 48. I think we're all high on the Titans here, but Karl, how high are we on the Titans?
Double digits high.
Really?
Maybe at least a touchdown. Yeah, I took them in my best bets. I think it's at least a touchdown difference. That's why that middling number of 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, whatever it ends up being at the time you're listening to the podcast. If it's anywhere in those numbers, take it. 6, 7. That's cutting it close. But yeah, I'm on the Titans all the way here, especially not really knowing what's going on with Carson Wentz right now. I'll take the Titans and lay in those points.
Tommy, have you ever heard of somebody have 2 sprained ankles at the same time?
No, I don't. And if there's one person that would do it, it's Carson Wentz.
Absolutely. Can we just rename that? Can we call that the Carson?
The Wentz?
Like the Wentz. Like you got Tommy John surgery. You wind up with like a double sprained ankle. We just call it the Wentz.
Are you guys ready for this?
Yes.
When you have pain in one ankle, you wince. When you have pain in both ankles, you went.
Right.
I like that. There you go. That's it. Book it.
I'm pretty sure they taught me that in one of my English classes. Yeah, I think so.
I'm actually going back and forth on this one. I haven't fully decided if I want to take the Tennessee Titans with the points, because it all funnels towards the Colts defense is good. Like, you want this to be a get-right game for Ryan Tannehill, but the Colts defense is very good. Regardless of who plays, if it's Wentz or Jacob Eason, I don't know how good the Titans defense is. But if it's Jacob Eason, it's kind of a wash. And all of this is telling me that it's gonna, like, everything seems to wash out for me. So I was leaning Tennessee, but now that I've explained it out loud to myself, I think that 5.5 is too much. So I'm going to take the Colts, but the Titans will win.
I think you're on dollar bill island there, because I am taking the Titans as well.
I'm going to get burned by this one. I'm calling it now.
I disrespected the Titans in week 1. I learned my lesson last week. Maybe I'm overreacting to an overreaction week, but I like the Titans a lot, and I just don't know if there's a quarterback in Indianapolis right now. Maybe if Peyton Manning comes out of retirement and gets a little bit of that TB12 water, maybe I'll jump on the Colts if that happens before Sunday. But otherwise, I am going to stick with Tennessee. All right, moving on. The football team, we talked about this a little bit. They're heading into Buffalo. Buffalo, a big number, 8-point favorites. The total there, 46 points. So it sounds like we are expecting defense, or maybe just kind of a similar blowout type game for Buffalo, with not a lot of offense on the board for Taylor Heineke and the football team. But Tommy, do we agree? I mean, what do we think of this spread? 8 points is a lot, but we're pretty uncertain about the football team. What do you think?
8 points is a lot. Josh Allen took a very bad defense last week and still only threw about 50% of his passes. The Washington football team has burned me twice so far this year, but I'm going to go right back to that well and just get burned again, baby. I'm taking that. 8 points is just so much for a Buffalo Bills team that I don't think has been as good as advertised. Still, even with a 35-point drubbing, I don't have confidence in them. I think that they'll win, but 8 points is a lot.
Yeah, I agree. 8 points is a lot, but I feel like they could win by over those 8 points. It's a stay off for me because of the number, or at least like straight up. We've talked about potential teasers, so we'll get into that a little bit later. This is a good teaser spot to get it down to a manageable number. But I am going to pick Buffalo -8 as my pick because I think there's a little value on that. I have him as like 9.5 points would be the sweet spot. So again, a stay off because 8's a weird number. It's not one of the numbers I'm comfortable betting like heavily. But in the case of a teaser and for the sake of this bet, yeah, I'll take Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, by the time people listen to this, it really could be 9.5, 10 points. I thought it might open a little bit, lower than it did. 8 points feels like a solid starting ground based on where I think that this could go. Although it hasn't really moved much in the first 2 days here, so maybe it'll stick right there around 7.5, 8, 8.5. But either way, I agree with you, Karl. I'm tossing the Bills in a teaser if I bet them, or at least finding an alternate game line to bet if I don't, parlay that or tease it with something else. But for the sake of the pod, I'll go with the Bills -8. So once again, Tommy on Dollar Bill Island there with the football team.
Got my timeshare ready to go.
Ready to go. The Dolphins and the Raiders. We talked about this one a bunch already. The line opened at 5.5. Now the Raiders are laying just 3.5 points. The total here is 45, but there are a lot of question marks in this game. Tua Tagovailoa, we have no idea if he's going to play. He is day to day. He has a rib injury. I actually was thinking today, I wonder if maybe he started to crack those ribs a little bit when Matthew Judon just really laid him into the earth in week 1 with that monster hit. I mean, I don't know. If Tua plays, I can't imagine he's going to be better than he's been to this point with a rib injury. Let's just hope that a team doctor doesn't puncture his lung a la Tyrod Taylor, because that would be terrible. But the Raiders have a fair amount of injuries of their own. I don't know what to make of this game. But, Karl, I think you don't like the Raiders, do you?
I do not. I mean, I don't know. 3.5 is, again, a tough number because of that hook. It burned me last week with the good team and the Rams, so I don't want to risk it this week. So I'm going to take the Dolphins plus 3.5. Not one that I'm betting because I think the line's probably really close. I think 3 points is a good number. So 3.5 with that hook, I'll take Dolphins. But again, pretty much a stay off game for me.
Tommy, you like the Raiders here.
Yeah, I mean, I thought 5.5 was a fair line at first, and the fact that it just has moved down 2 whole points at this point. Like I was saying, I don't understand why people, if you're betting on this game, I would wait until we get the full injury reports, especially with Derek Carr in mind. The other factor to watch out for is this is a Kenny and Drake revenge game. I believe that he played against them as a member of the Cardinals, but I could be wrong. So this would be the second matchup if my memory is correct. But still, if Josh Jacobs is out and he's looking to prove former team wrong, watch out for that. And with just 3.5 points, I'll take the Raiders and just take that risk.
Maybe a nice DFS play for Kenny and Drake. I am gonna wait on this game if I'm gonna bet it in real life because I don't want to bet. I mean, period. I don't want to bet on Jacoby Brissett, and I don't want to bet on Nathan. Is it Nathan Peterman? Is he the backup right now in Las Vegas? So I'm not betting on either of those guys. If Derek Carr plays, I'm picking the Raiders. 3.5 is a low enough number, unless like Derek Carr has a secret broken ankle that we don't know about. What?
A Wentz, if you will.
A Wentz, if you will. Yes. If Derek Carr has a Wentz, okay, fine. We can talk about the Dolphins. But either way, an injured Tua or, all due respect, I like Jacoby Brissett, former Patriot. I just don't know if they get the job done on the road. So give me the Raiders, 3.5 points now. I like it. I felt okay with it at 5.5. So now that it's down to 3.5, as long as Derek Carr plays. But again, I'm going to wait to see that injury report before I put any real money on it. All right, the Cardinals are headed to Jacksonville to take on Trevor Lawrence and the winless Jaguars. I don't know if they're ever going to win a game because the Cardinals are favored by 7.5 points in this one, and it almost feels like too low. It feels like it could be higher. The total is 52 points, so defense not something that Vegas foresees in this matchup. I'm on the Cardinals minus 7.5. But Karl, what do you think? What does the formula tell you?
The formula says that we should see like 6.5 as the spread. So 7.5 is
a little high.
Cutting it. It's a little high. It's cutting it a little close also. So I would take Jacksonville in this situation. It's a stay off game for me in terms of like betting actual money. But I'd take Jacksonville with a slight opportunity for it to be a 7-point game or less. So that 7.5 hook is kind of what I'm banking on here. Similar to the Dolphins situation where that half point could make the difference, could make or break that bet. I think as long as it's 7.5 or above, we take the Jaguars here. If it starts to drop down, then it's basically just a toss-up. You can flip a coin on that one.
Well, Karl, you can either get a pina colada or whatever frozen beverage is your favorite ready because you are on the $dollar bill island right now. I am taking the Arizona Cardinals as well. I think this is a perfect. We talked about Kyler Murray where he has been great so far, but he's had a couple moments where it's been the decision making hasn't been there. I think that this is a complete get right game and right back into MVP form for him. So I think this is a 10-point at least victory for the Cardinals. Give me that.
If you like Kyler for MVP, bet it before Sunday because he's about 7-1, 8-1, depending on where you're looking at it. And after he lights up the Jaguars defense, that number is only going to be worse for you if you decide you want to bet it later. I will say I do think there's going to be a lot of scoring because I don't know that Arizona has a defense. If Chandler Jones pulls another 5-sack game out of his pocket,
say he might have 10 sacks by the end of the weekend.
Right, which 15 sacks in 3 games will put him right back into that MVP conversation just because it's fun to talk about. So I will worry about the backdoor cover, but at the same time, I don't know. Cardinals 7.5. I just think it could be higher. I think Kyler Murray and that offense is too good, and the Jaguars are too bad. The biggest question is going to be what the Cardinals defense can do against Trevor Lawrence. That's the question mark for me. And I don't know if they're ready to even backdoor cover with a number that big. So I'm going to stick with the Cardinals as well. All right. Final slate of games here. We called it, do I have to, as in, do I have to watch? Do I have to bet? Can we just move on from these? So we're going to hit them pretty quickly. Although we all like the Panthers a little bit, but they're 8.5-point favorites in Houston this week. No Tyrod Taylor, of course, no Deshaun Watson for the foreseeable future. The total is only 43.5 points. And if you didn't think that this game was going to be weird or sloppy enough as is, it's on a Thursday night. So for all we know, Sam Darnold's going to be seeing ghosts when he goes to Houston. I don't know, Karl, you're shaking your head here. How do we feel about the Panthers or the Texans?
I am going to take the Texans in this game, which is not the popular opinion. Maybe I can't account for the injuries. Maybe I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just out there. But I think that there's a little bit of value on the Texans with the spread being that high on a Thursday night game. I mean, we've seen Thursday night games be close. A lot of primetime games tend to be close. So I don't know. I think that the points are a little bit too much. Backdoor cover is always in play, and 8.5 is like 2 points over the hook. So yeah, I'm going to take the Texans if I had to bet it. But because these are 2 bad teams on a Thursday night, it's probably going to be a stay away game.
Tommy, you're shaking your head. You love the 2-0 Panthers. You are offended that Karl just called them bad. So who are you going to take here?
It's not that I love them. It's that they are 2-0 against an arguably quality team, one quality team in the Saints. And you made some great points about the 8.5 spread and the backdoor cover and everything. And the short week at home does benefit Houston as well. With that all said, I am going to take the Panthers. I'm just going to shoot my shot here with I think that they proved last week that if there is subpar quarterback play, they can funnel towards stopping the run, which, like I said, they held Kamara to under 1 yard per carry. And let me tell you, the Houston Texans do not have anybody close to Alvin Kamara in their backfield. So I think that
57-year-old Mark Ingram and David Johnson don't do it for you?
absolutely not. Maybe Philip Lindsay if he doesn't get injured. But no, I will take the Panthers with this. I think that this is another post 3-0 record for a bad team.
All right. Well,
whatever. Maybe the Panthers. Maybe I'll rock the Panthers hat next week. I mean, they don't really deserve it. It's not really a big victory, but
listen. All right, we're gonna flip this around here because Homer Pat is coming out. Because here is what we talked about before the pod. If Mac Jones wasn't on the board for our New England Patriots, you know who they were looking at? Our guy, Davis Mills. I don't know. The Texans have been looking pretty good. If the Patriots liked him as a later quarterback flyer, actually, I really shouldn't do that. They haven't had a good quarterback that they've drafted besides Jimmy and Tom in a long time. We'll see about Mac. But regardless, I don't know. The Texans are playing well. 8.5 is a huge number. Maybe it's because he was a Jet. I just don't really trust Sam Darnold, regardless of what they just did to the Saints, who could suck. I'm taking the Texans. Give me the points. Thursday nights favor the home team. So Texans have that going for them already. Give me the points. Texans plus 8.5. All right. Taking the Homer hat off, we are moving on to the Jets and Tommy's other favorite team, the Denver Broncos, who are favored by a whopping 10.5 points. Total there is only 41. Tommy, you love the Broncos, but this is a really, really big number against a really, really bad team. So where do you land on taking the Broncos or the Jets?
It is a big number. And I did just go against picking the home team for the Thursday night football game. But there is a little thing called Mile High Flu. And although Zach Wilson did go to BYU.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Looks like we've got some controversy brewing here
inside my own
brain.
brain, but I'm gonna stick with my instincts. I'm gonna go with the Broncos. Could be another 3 INT game. Maybe not 4 this time, but multiple interceptions for Zach Wilson. The rest of the team is gonna be suffering that Mile High Flu. I think Denver is gonna be ready to play, and the safe option is always bet the home team for that scenario.
Let me tell you, folks, if you are only listening to this podcast, it is worth the price of admission, which is free, to watch that segment on YouTube, because to see all those alarms going off in Tommy's head live, absolutely worth it. Back on track here, Karl. 10.5 is huge. We love to take the points, but the Jets?
Yeah, no. Never with the Jets anymore. Never. Maybe sometimes, but not this week. I think it's going to be my thing says it's going to be a little over 11 points. So 10.5 is a weird number. Again, it's you got the hook involved, so it's probably a stay away for me. But if you're looking at one side or another and you really want to bet this game, I would take the Broncos. Yeah, I think that there's a chance that this is a bigger blowout, like 13, 14 points or above.
The Jets suck. I'm taking the Broncos. It's a huge number. I don't like it. The Jets suck.
Devontae Green breakout game. Watch out.
Interesting. Okay. The Atlanta Falcons on the road taking on the New York Football Giants, who are favored by 3. Guys, over here is 47.5, but 3-point favorites for the Giants, even at home against the Falcons. Is this an overreaction to almost winning that game on Thursday?
I'll say that I have the line pretty close to where it is. I have Giants 3-1-9, so it's pretty on par for where I have it. I think they're two pretty evenly matched teams, so the home field advantage is really all that makes a difference here. So with it being an even 3 points, I would do the 3 points for the Giants. If it gets 3.5, then you're looking at taking the Falcons because of that like value being gone because of the hook. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a bad game, which is why I'm not going to bet it actually. But Yeah, let's go Giants. Straight up -3 would be where we take it.
I was gonna say pretty much the same thing, that Vegas just gave the Giants 3 points because they're acknowledging that this is a trash bowl game. I do like the fact that even though Saquon was limited the first 2 weeks, they get that extra little half week of rest for him to get rejuvenated and everything, coming off the Thursday night game. And I also think that if I'm taking the spread, I will take the Giants in this game with the cover.
I talked about a funeral for Ben Roethlisberger. What I'm really hoping is that we're not having a funeral for Matt Ryan in the near future, Matty Ice. But because I am rooting against that funeral and I think he still has some gas in the tank, give me the points here. I'll go out on Dollar Bill Island and I will take the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not done with them yet. I don't think they're good, but I think they're better than they have shown. And you know what? Maybe those old bones just got to warm up a little bit for Matt Ryan. A couple weeks into the season, a nice game against a really bad Giants team. Give me the points. I'm taking the Falcons alone on Dollar Bill Island. All right, and our final game of the week. This is just a crazy number. We talked about this in our best bets when I took the Baltimore Ravens -9 against the Detroit Lions. Total there is 49.5 points. We've seen the Ravens. I talked earlier, like the Raiders kind of play up or play down to their competition when they're all healthy, of course. The Ravens kind of feel the same way. They showed up for that Chiefs game. They did not show up for the Raiders game in week 1. Maybe this is a trap. I think there could be. There's definitely backdoor cover possibility for Detroit. But I'm taking the Ravens. We already know that. So, Karl, how do you feel about this massive number, 9 points for the Ravens on the road?
Yeah, being on the road is what makes it tough, but I still think that they're such a better team. So 9's okay. 10, I would still probably take because you have the ability to push and get your money back. But I don't know. 10.5 is a weird number. Anything higher than that. So 10 or lower, I'll take the Ravens, and I'll actually bet on it. Above 10 with that half point and above, I'll stay off it completely. So Ravens here, anything 10 or below.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was a big bounce back game for Lamar last week. He looked like he was back to his MVP form, and I think the Ravens as a whole are going to ride that big momentum swing into Detroit, and just I think they'll cover. Maybe not easily because 9 is a lot, but I think they'll cover.
All right, that'll do it for our NFL slate here, which means it is finally time. I teased it off the top as we end the podcast here. It's time for a party in a segment that we like to call the Parlay Party. Folks, let's hear it. Boys, let's go. Parlay Party. All right, we're mixing it up a bit this week. I'm going to recap what we did last week. Spoiler alert. We lost thanks to Tommy's Eagles bet straight up. Yikes. Which means the parlays that we've given you so far, we are 0-2 on the season. We've been looking for value there. We might do the same thing. But for now, I think we're going to play it safe. So this first parlay that we're going to talk about here, you know what? We're just going to call it Playing It Safe, sponsored by our friends at Trojan. Just kidding. Hashtag not a sponsor. But I thought that would be great if they were. Karl and I were talking about this. There's a lot of games that we don't love this week straight out with the lines, but there's a lot of teaser potential. So, Karl, we ran through this earlier. Why don't you give me a couple? It sounds like maybe – is it just a teaser? Are you going to give me a strip teaser here? Like another plug
for the YouTube? A strip teaser?
A little bit, yeah. Oh, YouTube audience, you're lucky.
Play that music.
Play that music.
You naughty. You teasing me, you naughty.
What do you got for your teaser here or your parlay? What do you want to do?
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you a teaser here. I typically don't play teasers. Because there's obviously a little risk involved where you have to hit multiple teams. For those of you who don't know what a teaser is, we touched on it, I think, in earlier weeks, but you can take a team and give them a set amount of points. Typically it's 6. You can do 6.5, 7, but basically taking a line that Vegas gives you, adding 6 to it. So a team that is minus 6.5, if you give them those 6 points, they drop down to minus 0.5. Or if you give it to an underdog, let's say an underdog is +3, you give them +6, that bumps them from +3 up to a +9. So it doesn't have to be those specific numbers, but basically the concept is you're adding points, lessening the value of return. So that's why you pick multiple games there. You have to pick at least 2. Typically, I think a 2-team 6-point teaser is a minus 120 return. We're trying to help you get more money for the amount that you bet here. So a little bit riskier. We're going to go 3-team teaser, a 6-point teaser here. Kansas City, we're going to take from 6.5 down to 6. I'm sorry, down 6 to 0.5. That's minus 0.5. We're going to take Buffalo from -8 to -2. That's crossing kind of those key numbers of like the 6 and 7 where the touchdown breaks it, and the 3 and 4 where, again, like you have that like field goal potential. So getting it down to -2 is a good number. And then calling it all the way back, probably going to get some hate from my colleagues here, but we're going to take Minnesota from +2 up to +8. Seattle's a really good team. It just seems like they can never win by more than a touchdown. It seems like every game they play is a 1-possession game. So if we can get it to +8, get it over those key numbers, I think that's going to help us out. So those 3 teams you want to tease: Kansas City, Buffalo, Minnesota, 6 points on each, +160. So if you bet $10, you get 16. Obviously, do the math, however much you want to bet for your personal bankroll gets you that 1.6 times return.
I like it. I won't say that I love Minnesota. We've kind of run through those thoughts, although I don't like betting Minnesota. I can't quit them. That offense is too fun. The defense is really bad. But if you get the value there at +8, the total bet's +160. Why not? Put a little cheddar on it. Have yourself a day. I'm also going to give you a teaser here. So I already talked about how much I like the Bucs, and I like them so much. In fact, I think I mentioned this, that before the pod earlier today, the Bucs were still an underdog. They're still a 1-point favorite. So I actually have them in multiple teasers, both 6 and 7-point teasers, which means I have the Bucs at +7 and +8. They are getting those points, which is really phenomenal when you look at, I mean, regardless of who they're playing, but especially against a really good team in the Los Angeles Rams. So I'm taking the Bucs here, who are currently favored. We're actually going to do a 7-point 3-team teaser. So I'm going to take the Bucs, and those 7 points takes the Bucs up to a 6-point underdog. They're getting 6 points. We talked about how much we like Tennessee Titans, with that line being at 5.5. 7 points brings them up to a 1.5 point. They're getting 1.5 points. And then the Baltimore Ravens, I told you they were begging to be teased. And so we are going to have them all the way down 7 points to -2. So if we take that 3-team teaser, 7-point 3-team teaser, that gives us +130 odds. Again, you bet $10 to win 13. As Karl said, you can do the rest of the math on your own time. And so that's what I like: the Bucs, the Titans, and the Ravens. And just to give you the odds and a little bit to think about, if you like everything that we just said, all of those teams, and you think that would be, you want to risk it a little bit more for the biscuit and put a little extra money, some extra teams in there, then I'm just here to tell you that a 6-team 6-point teaser is a +600 odds for that bet. If you're Catholic, that's probably way too many 6s for your liking, so I apologize. You're going to stay away from it. But you can also do a 6-team 7-point teaser to get the numbers on the lines that I had, and a little bit better numbers than what Karl had. And that still gives you a +450. So that's 10 to win 45. Really great return, good value. Obviously, 6 teams is a lot. You have to really consider it if you think everyone can do it. But again, the nice thing about the teaser is that you are moving those lines to a place that you are more comfortable with them. And one other team to think about, I'm not going to even give you any more odds, but if you don't like one of the teams, maybe you don't like my Bucs bet, maybe you don't like Karl's Vikings bet, If you're looking for someone else, I think the Cleveland Browns as 7-point favorites right now, begging to get teased down to a 1-point favorite or a pick 'em. So something to keep in mind there as well. All right, and our final parlay of the night here, we're giving you some safer numbers. Obviously, we're playing it safe. So if you like to live life on the wild side, right there on the edge of the cliff, we are here to help you risk it for the biscuit. Boys, we love betting on dogs. Well, maybe we don't love it, but we love winning money when we bet on the dogs and the dogs win. So when the dogs take it home, we got the money there. I mean, that's what everybody wants to see. This is a terrible introduction to this, but we're just going to run with it because we each have an underdog that we like. Tommy, lead us off. Tell me, if you're going to risk it for the biscuit this week, what team are you putting money on and why?
I am actually choosing the Atlanta Falcons. I know that I just took the Giants in the spread and everything with like that, but like I said, it's a trash bowl game. It is essentially a pick 'em, and the Falcons right now are at plus 140 odds. So if it's a pick 'em game and it's just a little toss up, I'd rather just put some money on the underdog there, maximize my winnings, and if the coin lands my way. And if it's a 50-50 shot plus odds, I'll bet on that every time.
I like it. That was probably going to be my pick if I'm taking one. But I also love, if the Buccaneers were still dogs here, I would do that. And I could still take the -1 here for decent odds. But you know what? Give me the Minnesota Vikings. If we're going to do it, like let's just do it.
Let's do it.
Kirk, I love that. I got oddly almost sexual earlier talking about it, but that offense just makes me feel so good, even though Dalvin Cook might have winced his ankles last week. I just give me the Vikings. They're plus 115 money line. Let's just toss it together and have ourselves a day, boys. Karl, what do you think?
Okay, so I like those two picks. Picks.
Okay.
I'm tossing up between like two crazy picks. I want to pick the Texans on Thursday night. I want to do it. If they win on Thursday night, then I take them. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. There's so much going on with the Dolphins and the Raiders. I think that's another one of those toss-up games. So I'm going to throw the Dolphins in the mix here. It wouldn't be as good as the payout would be if we picked the Texans, but let's just go with the Dolphins here. Dolphins is my underdog of the week.
There you go.
All right, just to recap, Tommy is taking the Atlanta Falcons at plus 140. I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings at plus 115. And Karl is taking the Miami Dolphins at plus 155. If you really want to get crazy, get some cheddar spread, maybe some pub cheese, ready for that football. You're excited on a Sunday. Parlay those three babies together, and you get a juicy plus 1,215 odds, which means if you put $10 on that game, you're getting $120 plus in return. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than please gamble responsibly, folks, because if you think you have a problem, just call like 1-800-GAMBLER or something. Forget the speed dial that calls Karl back. But hey, if you don't have a problem, you can risk it for the biscuit with us. Remember, people, take the points, have fun at the books. Let's have ourselves a week 3 of the NFL season. Let's go.
Oh, bounce back, baby.
Let's go.